Hello, everyone. Most of the news today on Thanksgiving Day, celebrated in the U.S., is about Trump's appointment of retired General Keith Kellogg as special envoy to Russia and Ukraine. So this is actually not as bad as his previous picks. So this one is likely to be confirmed because at least this dude has two functioning brain cells in his head. That said, there are some contradictions already between what is being said now and what was said in the past, specifically coming from Mr. Kellogg himself. There are articles both on the CNN website and Associated Press website talking about the various proposals that Keith Kellogg is weighing for ending the war in Ukraine, since this was one of the major points of the Trump presidential campaign. At this time, there are no specifics to this, and that is troubling considering that this is a very long-standing conflict, and you would think if somebody was trying to end it, he would have started considering how exactly to do this by now, but not happening. Of course, there is the expected peace, talking about pushing more of support for Ukraine onto European allies and other NATO members. No surprise there. And then there is this. So this particular bit is from Trump himself, saying that Ukraine should have given up a bit and saying that any deal is better than what we have right now. Unfortunately, he seems to completely ignore the history and the opinion of Ukrainian people themselves on the matter. Also, remember, this is a guy who refused to acknowledge that he lost the 2020 election and organized a riot so that he wouldn't be dislodged from the White House. So when it comes to the matters of giving up a bit, things are a bit hazy. In a proposal coming from Kellogg himself and Trump's former ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell, there's a suggestion of creating of autonomous regions that would not belong to either Russia and Ukraine. What they probably have in mind is like the Donetsk, Luhansk region, possibly Zaporizhia region, basically, the lineup along the border there. But here's again something interesting. In order to do this, you'd have to conduct a referendum within that region, and it's kind of hard to do when there is an invasion going on. So in order for independent regions to even be considered, both armies would have to withdraw from their territory, and that means both Russian and Ukrainian. But here is something else. There is a bit of insincerity in those proposals being considered by General Kellogg. Earlier this year, he has written a paper on the subject, co-written with another author, that was proposing a ceasefire and talking about how to settle the conflict. At that time, they were suggesting that U.S. would continue to arm Ukraine and beef up its defenses against Russia. But look at that last paragraph. In the paper, the two authors seem to acknowledge that an end to the war was unlikely while Russian President Vladimir Putin is still leading the country. So this is the worst kind of hypocrisy. Kellogg knows whom he is dealing with. Kellogg knows that the party involved will not negotiate any deal that is of any disadvantage to them. And yet, he is still pushing these so-called options. That is just the worst. I could forgive the ignorant. Kellogg is not ignorant. While I'm sure this particular item about White House pushing Ukraine to lower the age of army conscription to 18 years of age, I'm sure this is going to cause a lot of anger. But they're right. It's not a pretty picture, but they're right. The math doesn't work. Ukraine needs more soldiers, and not just because it needs more soldiers, period, but it also needs to allow for some kind of time off for the soldiers that have been at the front lines nonstop for 2.5 years now. Because a tired soldier is not an effective soldier. So somebody has to come in and take up the slack. Here's the problem with this suggestion is experience and training. When and where would that take place? Because again, remember, Ukrainian army stretched extremely thin. When are you going to do the training of new recruits? And who is going to do it if everybody is at the front lines? Are you going to just throw them in there into battle like Russia does with their people? Remember, Ukraine doesn't have the luxury of wasting hundreds of thousands of lives like Russia does. So there are some issues there. And once again, there is a little bit of a hypocrisy there. The world had a chance to nip this in the bud after the annexation of Crimea. The world had a chance to, once again, avert the larger conflict when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine first began. That wasn't done. So at this point, giving advice to Ukraine on what they should do is a little bit like telling the person who is in chronic pain, well, have you tried yoga? Now, this is an interesting fact, and it's true. So, I told you, Ukrainians are really making it a very steep bargain for Russia. They're not giving up. But again, with Russia's population, they have more people to throw away. Whether it's moral, whether it's okay, that is a separate question. Ask the Russian people. For now, they appear to be fine with it. But, yes, this is true. 1 month expectancy for recruits thrown into this war on the Russian side. And then there's this is Kyiv Post, so this is a Ukrainian source, and it's talking about basically all of the points that sort of overturn any suggestions of Kellogg's about any kind of negotiation anywhere. So, while Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service chief said that Russia is ready to negotiate, it's not ready to negotiate, it's ready to accept terms of surrender. That's what he is actually saying. There. Now we are down to the brass tacks, so to speak, because he continues pushing the Russian propaganda narrative that Russia is not at fault for starting this war. They don't want Ukraine joining NATO. They don't want EU helping Ukraine. They don't want the US helping Ukraine. And they want to keep a portion of Ukrainian territory. And every time you speak to them, they want more. How do you negotiate with people like that? They don't understand this. We don't know how this war will end at this point. Those of you who are living in parts of the world where you're not being bombed every day, where you still have your homes, your loved ones, your friends, be thankful.